Have you ever noticed how some people seem disciplined all the time? They work out consistently, they follow through, they execute, they do what they say they're going to do. And from the outside, it looks like they have something you don't. More motivation, more willpower, more drive. But I don't think that's true. In fact, I think most people completely misunderstand discipline because the most disciplined people I know aren't constantly fighting themselves. They aren't waking up every morning trying to convince themselves to do the right thing. They've simply learned a different set of rules. Rules that make discipline feel almost automatic. Not easy, not effortless, but automatic. And today, I want to share those rules with you because these 5 rules are what I found to be the difference between men who constantly start over and men who become someone they can trust. And I thought about this as I helped one of the guys in my push program implement it 2 years ago for the first time. I won't mention his name, but he was the kind of man most people would say was doing well. He was married, had 2 kids, owned a house, made good money, took care of his responsibilities, showed up to work every day. And from the outside, everything looked fine. But if you had asked him privately how he felt about himself, his answer would have been very different because he knew something nobody else knew. He knew he wasn't living up to his potential. And not because he lacked talent, not because he lacked opportunity, but because he couldn't trust himself anymore. Every Sunday night, he'd sit down with his push planning tool to plan out the coming week, right? Full of ambition, full of plans, full of good intentions. And if you asked him that night, he would have said, this is the week. This is the week I get back in shape. This is the week I wake up early. This is the week I work on that business idea. This is the week I'm going to be more intentional with my kids. And every Monday morning, he believed it. But by Wednesday, life had happened. Work got busy. The kids needed something and unexpected problems showed up. And by Friday, most of those promises were broken. Then Sunday came again and he found himself creating another plan to fix the previous plan. Week after week, month after month, until eventually he stopped believing himself. And that's what scared him because he knew he wasn't lazy. He knew he was capable. He knew he had done hard things before, but every time he looked in the mirror, there was a growing gap between the man he said he wanted to be and the man he was actually becoming. Then one day he told me something I'll never forget. He said, Dion, I trust my boss more than I trust myself. And that's real. If you really tap into what he's saying, that's true for a lot of people. I mean, he would never miss a commitment at work. He would never fail to deliver for a client, but he was breaking promises to himself every single week. And that's the real problem. Not motivation, not information, not intelligence. He had accumulated years of evidence that he couldn't trust his own word. So we started rebuilding things differently. One promise at a time, one action at a time, one day at a time. And the framework that I guided him through is what I now call the 5 rules for automatic discipline. And before I give you the 5 rules, there's something important that I think you need to understand. And that's most people think that discipline is binary. A 0 or a 1, a yes or a no, meaning you either have it or you don't. And it's not. And if you can learn it, then it's a skill. So that means discipline is something you build on a continuum. And from what I've seen and experienced myself, I don't think disciplined people feel disciplined most of the time. They've simply removed the debate. They don't wake up and ask, should I work out today? The decision has already been made. They don't negotiate. They don't vote. They execute. And that's why discipline looks automatic from the outside, not because they're stronger than everyone else, but because they've built a life, they've built a situation that supports execution. And it starts with rule number 1. The first rule is ownership. And this is where most people lose before they even start because most people want better results without taking full ownership of their current reality. They blame their schedule, their boss, their spouse, their finances, their circumstances. And look, some of those things are legit, but ownership isn't about blame. Ownership is about responsibility. And here's why that matters. Because the moment that you blame something else, you give away that control. If your lack of fitness is because of your schedule, then your schedule controls your fitness. If your lack of progress is because of your boss, then your boss controls your future. And if your lack of execution is because of your environment, then your environment owns your life. Now, ownership says, regardless of the circumstances, I am responsible for finding a solution. And that's when things start changing, because ownership creates action. Excuses create waiting, and men who are waiting rarely become the men they want to be. You cannot improve what you refuse to own. And that's why ownership creates discipline. Rule number 2 is standards. Right? Most people don't have standards. They have preferences, and those are not the same thing. A preference says, I'd like to get in shape. A standard says, I'm going to train 4 days a week. A preference says, I'd like to spend more intentional time with my kids. A standard says, every day from school pickup to 6 p.m., my kids have my complete attention. A preference is, I'd like to grow my business. A standard says, I'll spend 1 hour every day generating opportunities. Preferences are optional, standards are expected. The reason so many people struggle with discipline is because they negotiate everything. Every workout becomes a decision. Every task becomes a debate. Every commitment becomes a conversation. Standards remove negotiation. They tell you what happens before emotions show up, because if your actions depend on how you feel, you'll always be vulnerable to how you feel. Executors don't rely on emotions. Executors rely on standards. And your life will rarely rise above the standards that you consistently accept. Your life reflects your standards, not your intentions, and that's why standards create discipline. Rule number 3 is structure. This is the rule most people underestimate. They think they need more motivation. What they actually need is better structure. Most people are trying to win a game they designed themselves to lose. They want discipline, but their environment supports distraction. They want consistency, but their calendar is built around reaction. They want better habits, but nothing in their day supports those habits. Think about fitness. If your workouts are scheduled, your meals are planned, your clothes are laid out, your chances of success increase dramatically. Not because you're more motivated, but because you've reduced the friction. The same thing happens with execution. Structure answers questions before they need to be asked. When are you training? When are you doing deep work? When are you spending time with family? When are you working on your goals? If you don't decide these things intentionally, life will decide them for you. And this is why I believe environment is the ultimate driver of consistent execution. Now, the right environment doesn't guarantee success, but the wrong environment almost always guarantees failure. Structure beats willpower every single time. And that's why structure creates discipline. Rule number 4 is daily proof. And this is where self-trust is built. Not in your thoughts, not in your intentions, not in your affirmations, in your actions. Every day you're casting votes. Votes for the person you're becoming. Every kept promise says, I follow through. Every broken promise says, I don't. And that's why I teach a simple equation. Kept promises equal +1. Broken promises is a -1. And most people are walking around with what I call a self-betrayal deficit, because they break more promises than they keep. They have years of evidence that they don't do what they say. And then they wonder why they don't feel confident. Confidence isn't missing. Evidence is missing. And every time you say, I'll start Monday, and you don't, your brain records that. Every time you say, I'll wake up early tomorrow, and don't, your brain records that too. And most people think self-trust is emotional. It's not. It's evidence. And evidence accumulates. The fastest way to rebuild self-trust is not through a breakthrough, it's through daily proof. Small promises, small wins, small acts of follow-through, repeated consistently. Because eventually your brain stops asking, can I trust myself? The evidence already answered the question. Self-trust is earned through evidence. And that's why daily proof creates discipline. Rule number 5 is identity. And this is where everything comes together. And most people think identity is where it starts, and it's not. Identity is where you arrive. Identity is the outcome. It's not the starting point. And this is where most self-improvement advice gets it backwards. People say, act like the person you want to become. And there's some truth to that, but eventually you need proof, because identity isn't built through declarations or affirmations. It's built through evidence. Think about your life. Why do you believe you're a father? Because you've accumulated evidence. Why do you believe you're an entrepreneur? Because you've accumulated evidence. Why do you believe you're capable of certain things? It's because you've accumulated evidence. Identity is accumulated proof, which means the first four rules are what creates the fifth. Ownership, standards, structure, daily proof. You repeat those long enough and eventually you stop trying to become someone different, because now you are someone different. You stop saying, I'm trying to be disciplined. You stop saying, I'm trying to get my life together. You stop saying, I'm trying to become consistent, because consistency is no longer something you do. It's someone you are. Identity isn't declared, it's earned. And that's why identity creates automatic discipline. And most people are looking for motivation, but motivation is only a small part of execution. Ownership, standards, structure, daily proof, those are the things that create identity. And identity is what creates automatic discipline. Because the goal isn't discipline, the goal is trust. Trust in yourself. Trust that when you say you're going to do something, you actually will. And when a man trusts himself again, everything changes. His health changes, his confidence changes, his leadership changes, his business changes, his relationships change, not because he found a better strategy, but because he became someone who follows through. And that's why these 5 rules are really about rebuilding trust in yourself. One promise at a time, one action at a time, one day at a time. But maybe you're watching this and thinking, okay, Dion, I understand the rules, but why do I still struggle to stay consistent? And that's exactly why I broke that down in my last video, why you're failing to stay consistent. Because the truth is, most people don't lose because they don't know what to do. They lose because they never become the person capable of sustaining the behavior. And if you ever found yourself starting over, falling off, losing momentum, making progress, and then drifting backwards, that video will help you understand why. If you like the content in this video, there's lots more coming. Subscribe to Something Real and be one of the first 100 subscribers of this channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.